Well, for more on all of this, I'm joined by retired colonel of the Israeli military intelligence and senior fellow at the Institute for Counterterrorism at Reichman University, Miri. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Al Arabiya News. It's being reported that Israel faces a shortage of interceptor missiles, and these are, of course, crucial for your air defences and the protective shield. Just tell us just how serious this shortage is and how it's being addressed.
The IDF has not said there's been a shortage. That's something that has come out from a lot of other places. The Israeli Defense Forces, and within that, the air defenses, which is part of the Air Force, had an enormous amount of time both to prepare for all of the different scenarios. Right now, Israel is intercepting rockets and missiles, still from Hamas in the Gaza Strip, from Hezbollah in Lebanon, from Hezbollah in Iraq, and directly from Iran. So obviously, we've used a lot of our interceptors, but this is something that is done both in Israel and around the world. I don't think that we're at the stage that we feel we can't intercept. We are aware that we need to replenish as much as we can. Who knows what's up the road?
Sure, and I mean, there's all these different mechanisms for intercepting and how Israel defends itself. There's the Iron Dome, which I gather is for short-range drones and missiles. There's David Sling, which is for intercepting heavier rockets. The Arrow system, which blocks ballistic missiles. And then the US says it's going to be deploying the THAAD defense battery. Just tell us what that will add to the level of protection that Israel will have.
What we're looking at right now is the possibility, the threat, that the Islamic revolutionary regime in Iran, the capabilities that are made in the Iranian industries, in their own military industries, a lot of it is what I call reverse engineering, both from North Korean missiles. Nowadays, they all have a lot of connections, both with Russia and with North Korea. And when Israel wants to stop, to defend, to intercept those incoming missiles. And that's, as you said, the short range, the mid range, and the long range. You have missiles today that are literally intercontinental ballistic missiles that Iran has developed over the years. They have a space industry. This is something that they're very proud of. They have put satellites into the sky, and that capability is one that the United States has been at the forefront of their capabilities to intercept literally something that's going into space and back from space. It's the combination of one layer on top of the other, and I do it with my hands as one on top of the other. All of them give protection to all of the people underneath. Let's be clear. None of them are 100%, meaning with any type of system like this, you always have a percentage that may get through these protection systems.
And with regards to a potential attack by Iran, in terms of the timing, it's unlikely to come before Israel's counterattack on Iran for the last Iranian attack, which was 3 weeks ago. Is that attack going to happen sometime soon, do you think? And what form are you expecting it to take?
When we look at it from Israel, and I think that inside the Middle East, we look at it a little bit differently than the rest of the world. This isn't tit for tat. The Islamic regime of Iran, through the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and a lot of their other arms, are the destabilizing, arming endless munitions, endless arsenals throughout the Middle East. The Houthis in Yemen, Hezbollah in Iraq, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and they themselves have fired directly against Israel in that missile attack, both in April and now again in October. So it isn't that suddenly there's something that starts and it's tit for tat. When we look at the Iranian capabilities that they've built up in their own industries over the years, they have every range of missiles and UAVs, drones that you can think of. Short range, mid range, long range. At the end, Iran is over 1,000 kilometers, almost really over 1,000 miles distance from Israel, which means that they have to have long-range missiles that are mainly a different type of rocket that has a guidance system. And for those, we are looking at the capabilities to intercept. Most of the types they have take, just because of the time it takes, 10 to 12 minutes to reach Israel. That gives you time to detect them, to intercept them in the air, to give early warning for people to go into shelters, to try to be as protective as possible. In the last two times, they fired 200 to 300, more or less at the same time, different types of projectiles. I would say that they have the capability to fire hundreds of rockets and missiles at the same time. And at the end, it's about the distance until they arrive here. I really would like to see this not happening. Israel did not choose a war, does not want a war, not a war with Iran, not a war with Hezbollah or Hamas. Having said that, I hope that we are ready for it, both with the defense systems, but also by preemptive actions.
Yeah, Israel's defenses were severely tested on Sunday when Hezbollah killed 4 soldiers in Binyamina. One of your colleagues said in response to that, I'm talking about Asaf Orion, who's a former Israeli brigadier general, he said, we're not seeing Hezbollah's full capability yet. I just wondered what you think he means by that and what sort of capability he is implying we might see in the future from Hezbollah.
So, Tom, I'm a person of words. So first I'm going to come and say we weren't severely tested on Sunday. I say it sadly. This is called statistics. We intercept 90 to 95%. And what we saw on Sunday was the one that got through. We'll learn the lesson from that one. But that doesn't change the equation. That's not a game changer. It's a horrific tragedy in its own way. But just like you can have a terror attack, even though you prevent 98%, the percent that gets through is an entire world. And I say that because I absolutely agree with Asaf, an old colleague and friend. I agree with him on this sense that Hezbollah has enormous capabilities. A small amount of them Hezbollah made on their own, mainly an industry that was established again by the Islamic regime of Iran in Lebanon and in Syria. But Hezbollah also has all of the cutting edge weapons that Iran was willing to give them. There was an open line of supply from Iran through Iraq, through Syria to get to Hezbollah in Lebanon. And I too do not see Hezbollah using the full extent of what I expected them to use. But here I'm going to put 2 caveats. Maybe they're not using them because we are preemptively attacking and destroying, degrading portions of it, not all of it, so they can't use it. And maybe they're not using them because they are holding back. And if they're holding back Hezbollah, it's only because the Islamic regime of Iran is the one that would tell them hold back, because Iran built this whole system so that nobody would ever attack Iran. They are the destabilizer, and that's part of the Iranian defense system. So both options are there. It could be both at the same time. They don't have enough capabilities and they want to hold back what they have. I would have expected to see swarms of drones, similar to what we've seen, unhappily, in the Russia-Ukraine war. We have not seen swarms here. We've seen singular ones. I expected to see 100, 200, 300, even 1,000 different types of projectiles fired within an hour, because that would overwhelm. It wouldn't stop our systems. It would just statistically make them less effective. And they haven't done so. And I do think that it's because they don't have, that we've degraded the capability and that they're holding back portions for that last day when Iran gets attacked.
Yeah, you mentioned the Iranian weapons, but it's reported that Hezbollah has also got some Russian and Chinese weaponry, in particular anti-tank missiles. Do you think that's likely? Do you think they actually do have those weapons?
The Israeli Defense Forces in the last 3 weeks have been acting in a kilometer area adjacent to the Israeli-Lebanese border on the Lebanese side. Tom, there is enormous footage that for some reason everybody's ignoring right now that has been put out from the tunnels, subterranean tunnels, just like you have in the Gaza Strip, only in the Lebanese terrain, where you have in these tunnels ATGMs, MLRSs, different types of RPGs, and absolutely have written on them, both in Russian and in Chinese, all of the above. It is an enormous cache of weapons. You know, it's not, hi, I just found 50 RPGs. You're finding an amount which is literally a terror army that has capabilities that very few standing militaries in the world have. Hezbollah, mainly in the Radwan force, had deployed in these underground caches directly next to the border. So there's footage of it. You can bring it up and see with the letters, both in Chinese and in Russian.
And there's an argument, isn't there, that Russia's got a vested interest here. They want the warfare to continue because it will exhaust US stocks of interceptor missiles, which we talked about at the beginning, because at the moment the United States is providing some of them. They're also giving some to the Ukrainians, and they'll reach a point, won't they, given supply and demand, that they'll have to choose between Israel and Ukraine.
Russia, as we speak right now, is using Russian airplanes to bomb in northern Syria against some of the areas where you have, it's jihadists, but it's other types of anti-Bashar Assad forces. So Russia is involved not just in supplying weapons, it is using Russian airplanes with Russian pilots right now to bomb physically inside northern Syria near the Turkish border. Russia buys from that Islamic regime of Iran that I talk about so extensively. They buy drones, UAVs. So we're talking about what is, to a certain degree, I don't want to call it a new alliance, but at the end of the day, is it just economic? Is it also ideological? Absolutely, Russia has a vested interest. They have an interest both in their forces on the ground physically that have been in Syria for many, many years, since the Soviet Union times, but also in the fact that their weaponry is the one that's used by a lot of the different countries in this area. So they're trying things out. They're on the ground. The only thing that maybe surprises me is that Israel still has diplomatic ties with Russia. But that's just about me, geopolitics in that sense, the fact that we have diplomatic ties both with Russia and with China, considering how they are right now participating by supplying weapons, by buying oil, by the drones, etc. It's quite surprising.
We're hearing from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he's ruling out any talk of a ceasefire that was sort of floated by Hezbollah in the last 24 hours. I just want to ask you, what's your understanding of how Israel is doing in terms of achieving its objectives on the ground in Lebanon?
In the military sense, what the actions of the IDF have been over the last 3 weeks is by physically not just clearing out, they're not burning down bushes, but they're going into both that subterranean underground arena that's being exposed into the towns and villages that are right next to the border, and they are destroying, degrading the Radwan force, that's the elite Hezbollah force that was going to do an October 7th attack. And when people ask me, what does that mean? They were planning to do an October 7th attack. In the years before the October 7th attack, one of the reasons, not the only one, that Israel was so blindsided and did not see what was happening with Hamas was because we were looking at the Radwan forces at Hezbollah and what they were preparing. So when you ask, what is Israel doing? Where are we going? First and foremost, we're denying the Radwan force in Hezbollah from doing an October 7th attack. They wanted to do it in the last few weeks. They want to attack. They had a full plan that was called Operation Liberation of Galilee. You can go bring up footage of Hassan Nasrallah presenting it with a map of all of the Radwan forces showing themselves do so. For somebody to be able to come back and live in their town, village, kibbutz, city, which is adjacent to the Israeli-Lebanese border, a kilometer from the border, 5 kilometers from the border, you have to be able to believe that Hezbollah cannot do an October 7th attack. We already saw that kind of attack. And that's what the military forces are doing. In addition, they are attacking mainly from the air. The cache of weapons that Hezbollah, again, this enormous amount of weapons that came into South Lebanon over the last 15 years, at the time that UNIFIL was deployed there as a force, and what UNIFIL was supposed to do was to prevent it coming there. And it did not do so. We are exposing enormous cache of weapons. So Israel is destroying the cache of weapons, trying as much as possible to make sure that when people come back home, they will believe, like I need to believe, that they are secure enough that there cannot be an October 7th attack. It doesn't stop every rocket. It doesn't stop every drone. But the action of October 7th, of that one day of coming in thousands, of destroying, pillaging, all of the different horrific actions that happened down south, that needs to be preemptively denied.
And Colonel Eisen, tell us a little bit about the terrain in the border area, because we've been talking quite a lot about the tunnels, we've been talking about what it's like there on the border. And for people who don't know, I mean, people who've never seen it, I mean, are there border walls and fences? I gather there are, and I'm just wondering how easily they can be breached. I'd also like to know whether there's anything that makes this terrain particularly hostile and particularly difficult for armies to operate in.
So I think a lot of people, especially when they're thinking of the Middle East, both of Israel, but of all of the countries that are around us, and this is on El Arabiya, but from outside the arena, they have a tendency to think of the Middle East as being sand. And in that sense, and flat. And the Gaza Strip is quite sandy and very flat, and it fulfills people's expectations. Lebanon is a beautiful mountainous country. It is very mountainous, Alp mountainous. Mountainous, think now of high mountains, snow in the winter. It has lots of forests. It has lots of boulders. So it has steep terrain, and this definitely impacts and has impacted inside Lebanon all the years. One of the things that you've always seen is that Lebanon was a place where persecuted people would go to because it's far away and you can be very disconnected. And I say that because that's part of the challenges that certainly the IDF face right now. Having said that, you don't stop because of that. You build your capabilities to try to get past that. It means you have to know what you can do with infantry, what you can do with vehicles, what you need to do with helicopters coming in. And you have to know that Hezbollah has anti-aircraft missiles, and that for them, they would love to bring down an Israeli plane, helicopter, etc. That would be for them an enormous success. So you have to look at all of these different capabilities. You take it slowly, systematically, and carefully. And that's what the Israeli troops on the ground have been doing in the last 3 weeks. I happen to be very old, and in the first Lebanon War, I was a young officer in 1982, and the biggest challenge that Israel had then, and then Israel invaded, and I'm using that term, to go against Palestinian terror organizations that were based inside southern Lebanon at the time and attacking into Israel, and the terrain was the thing that people did not understand how much it impacts you, what you can do with a Jeep, what you can do with a tank, what you can do with a motorcycle, and what you can do with a pickup truck. And that's really something you have to take into account.
Okay, well, I'm being told we're out of time. There was lots more I would love to have had time to discuss with you, but we're going to have to leave it there. Colonel Miri Eisen, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much, and happy holidays. Chag Sukkot Sameach.